Hey guys, MCU Collector here with another figure review, and this is the final figure in the Hasbro Marvel Legends series Super Villains Wave 1 XEMNU Build-A-Figure. We are finally at the Build-A-Figure video. This is XEMNU. So we will piece him together. We will also do a comparison with the Wendigo Build-A-Figure that we had, and we will also do it with the Sasquatch Build-A-Figure that we had, because a lot of these pieces are the same and reused. It's not all the same, but there's a lot of pieces that are the same. So let's get to it. We're going to zoom out a little bit. Let me adjust here. And I'm going to make sure I do this right. George is watching. Plastic Addict, he's watching. He's going to watch. I have to make sure that I put this Build-A-Figure together correctly. Head is always last, right? Head is always last. So we're going to get the torso piece. With the big championship belt piece that I still think should have been molded as part of the torso and not just an extra piece that's just put on top. Anyway, we will get the leg. This looks like it is the right leg. We're going to pop that onto the leg there, so you can see he is going to be a tall one. Let's pop that other leg on there. So now we have the two legs. We're going to get these arms. So here looks like the left arm. We're going to pop that left arm in there, nice and easy. You get the right arm. We're going to pop that right arm on there. So looking pretty good. Let's adjust and let's get that head on there. Okay, so XEMNU's body's together. Now we're going to get the head, and we're going to pop that on there to complete our Build-A-Figure. And you got to kind of get that peg in there in just the right spot and angle to be able to pop that in, and bam, voila, XEMNU. He looks all right. Yeah, he's just okay. I feel like I'm not really giving this figure a fair shake, because it seems like a lot of people were extremely happy when he was announced. Now, I'm not real familiar with XEMNU, so I looked up some information. I watched some YouTube videos. He was known as the first Hulk, not the Hulk that we know, not the Bruce Banner Hulk, but the first character to be called a Hulk, if that makes sense. But it is a very different version of XEMNU. It is not even this white version. He's big and brown. And I don't think he has some of these cybernetic pieces and things like that, because he's an alien. He's not from Earth. So there were some things, and you guys can Google it. You guys can check other YouTube videos to kind of have a better understanding of it. But it's pretty interesting. This is a much later version of XEMNU, not that first appearance XEMNU or anything like that where he was referred to as Hulk. So this is way different. So let's zoom in and take a look at the head sculpt, because it is actually done very nicely. And some of the cool things that they did with the figure in terms of the shading, which is pretty cool. That championship belt is the weakest thing of this figure, that I will say. And that's when we'll do the side-by-sides with the Wendigo and the Sasquatch figures, and also do, of course, Articulation. Okay, so looking at the head sculpt, looks really good. You don't see a mouth because you just don't see it. It's all covered in all that fur. It's very subtle, but there is a little bit of the blue shading actually here in the front. Not sure how well it's coming across on camera, but you can see it a little bit, and that looks very good because they didn't go too heavy with it. So it looks really nice. You can see there's a little bit of grayish color around his eyes, which are this deep red color, and it looks like they could almost be like separate piece up underneath to make sure they have that good layered look, because it doesn't really look like they're painted red. It looks like they're red plastic. I could be wrong on that, but it looks like it is a separate piece, and they could have easily done something with like this helmet if that was like a separate piece, and then glued into there to give the red. I could be completely wrong on that, but that is just how it looks to me, because it just looks too damn good for them to have just painted it or whatever. Looking at the top, we get this grayish silver color plastic, and that looks pretty good. It doesn't really look painted, unfortunately. I always think that silver paint looks better than just a silver plastic. This isn't terrible, and it's small enough that you can't really see kind of what the big difference would really be. But, you know, it works. It works. But looking at this, like this, it's a silver color, sure, but having it in front of you and looking at it, it's just the silver plastic. And I really don't like the silver rubbery plastic, because it's just, it's just not as good. It just doesn't look as good and doesn't look as metallic and doesn't really look like real metal. To me, anyway, you guys might think it looks pretty good, but just for me, I just don't really like it. And in terms of how it looks on this figure, again, I wish they would have done a new torso where it was just molded as part of the torso, because when it just sits on top, it just doesn't really look, or it just doesn't really look right to what the character is supposed to be, because it's actually supposed to be part of his body. It's not something that's just on top of his fur. It's part of his body. So normally, you know, when you look at images, you could see some fur kind of hanging over it, when this is just completely on top of the fur. So it just doesn't look it just doesn't look accurate to me. And that was the biggest gripe I had with this figure. You know, the reuse, that kind of thing's always going to happen. But at least do this right. If you're going to get the design of the character, at least do that better, if that makes sense. Looking at some more of the shading there in the torso, looks pretty good. It almost looks like they did some white paint also, just to kind of help kind of fade it back. It's kind of weird. You have to like look at it, because I'm looking at it right here on his pec. It almost looks like there's white paint also on top of some of that blue to really kind of give it that faded, to where they didn't overdo the blue. But it's done throughout the figure, and it's done nicely. We got there on the shoulder, the bicep, the forearm. Doesn't really look like he got any on the hands. We got some on the legs here, on his shins, the other arm, the other shoulder. Nothing on the back. Of course, it is all white, as you can see. Pop that leg in a little bit more. And of course, these legs and the arms are the same from Sasquatch and Wendigo. The hands are different. As you can see, he has 3 large fingers. Here in the inside, you can see some of the cybernetic stuff right there. And then his feet are different, where he has these 3 big-ass toes. So those are the parts that are new. The torso, the legs, and the arms are a reuse. So now let's do the articulation. Okay, what can XEMNU do? Not a whole lot. You can't really look up, look down, because you're just going to pop that head off. He can turn sideways a little bit, but not a whole lot. The arm can go out straight, which is cool. Full rotation, upper bicep swivel. We get a single jointed elbow, which gives us less than 90 degrees. But with these big ass characters, I'm not sure how much more else you could do, or how much else. A butterfly joint would be nice with these large characters, but it seems like Hasbro won't do it. We have a swivel at the wrist, and the hands hinge. The torso, you can't really use, and that's another problem with the way the design. You could do it a little bit, but I feel like it really puts some stress on there, and at that seam it looks like it could kind of bust, and that's glued down so it doesn't come off. So I'm scared I'm going to be popping that, so I won't do it more than that. You're not really going to get ab crunch going back. We have the waist swivel in there. Legs go out that far apart, which is pretty good. He can kick forward only that high, because this rubber piece is going to kind of get in the way. Upper thigh cut, of course, because that's where the leg connects. You get a double jointed knee like so. So not a whole lot of movement, but there is some. Foot doesn't really hinge down, because you're going to hit the fur there on the back. You actually do get a hinge up though. Ankle pivot, and you have to kind of work around the rubbery fur there to get it to work. And there is ankle pivot on the bottom of the feet. So pretty limited on what he can do. But if you guys have either Sasquatch or Wendigo, should not come as a surprise. Okay, so here we have the 3 of them together. XEMNU in the middle, Wendigo to the viewers left, and Sasquatch to the viewers right. So again, the arms are all the same for all these guys. Each one has their own hands. Each one has their own feet. They share the same legs. The torso pieces are somewhat different, or I guess it'd be more the hip piece, and then the top fur part on the shoulders are different. Wendigo has his own fur piece on the shoulders and his own hip piece, because he has a tail. So of course that was a different piece. This XEMNU, the entire torso and hip piece is the exact same as Sasquatch. So he is, even though he looks more like Wendigo, it is more so the Sasquatch figure, but of course different feet and hands. So not a whole lot else going there. The blue is much more subtle on this guy than on the Wendigo figure. The Wendigo had more of a like a icy looking blue, if that makes sense. A much lighter blue, whereas the XEMNU uses a little bit of a darker blue. Not that it's even all that dark, And it's more subtle on XEMNU than it was on Wendigo, where Wendigo, some areas were pretty heavy with the blue. The XEMNU figure just doesn't get that. Again, it's just very subtle there in the torso, the arms, and a little bit on the legs, and then of course the fur on his face. Okay, so here, as my review station is jam-packed with figures, you can still see Sasquatch and Wendigo a little bit. But here we have the entire Supervillains wave together. So I'm going to go over my ranking. And it's going to be, I think, a pretty interesting one. And I think one that a lot of people are probably going to disagree with me on. So here we go. My number one is going to be the God Emperor Dr. Doom. Such a fantastic figure. I really, really like it. My number two is probably going to be the a.i.m Scientist Supreme. I kind of like that figure. I really do. Number three is going to go to Lady Deathstrike. Number 4, Red Skull. Number 5, Dormammu. Number 6, Arcade. Number 7, The Hood. I did not forget any figures like I did in the Disney Plus wave and left Vision out of the list, but somehow still did it on a comment that's pinned, and I don't remember what my ranking was. But that was my ranking for the supervillain. So again, Dr. Doom, number 1. a.i.m Scientist Supreme, number 2. Lady Deathstrike, number 3. Red Skull, number 4. Dormammu, number 5. Arcade, number 6. And The Hood, number 7. And I feel bad for Red Skull and Dormammu because they are good figures. That new body, the elbows are kind of funky on it, and they're pretty plain, but they're very accurate to the comics in a very classic style, so you really can't fault those. So I know it seems like they're pretty low on the list, but Lady Deathstrike's really good, Dr. Doom's really good, a.i.m Scientist Supreme is really good. But you guys let me know down in the comments below, how would you rank it? Again, I don't ever rank Build-A-Figures. XEMNU would probably be after Dormammu if I were to throw it in, I guess. There's nothing special about the figure, nothing crazy. It looks cool, it's accurate-ish, besides that metal portion not being part of his torso. But, you know, there it is. The Super Villains wave, the first all villains wave, I think is a pretty good success. I think the Hood kind of hurts it a little bit, whereas the other character selection and choices are pretty good. Even Arcade is where I just don't like that body that they used, had they used the newer one. And it's funny, if you guys watched the Hasbro Fan First Thursday today, Ryan Ting had talked about suited bodies and said, now we have 3 suited bodies to use. Well, it's like, okay, well, just let's take one away and let's stick to the 2 new ones, right? The bigger MCU Obadiah Stane, Happy Hogan one, and then the younger Nick Fury one, as opposed to the original Agent Coulson one. But it is what it is. You guys let me know down in the comments below what you think of this wave, what you think of this Build-A-Figure, this XEMNU figure. You let me know all down in the comments below. If you guys liked the video, please do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe if you have not already done so. And as always, thank you for watching.